Every life is a story, every moment a chapter. Here on Slow English Stories, we pause to listen.
Hello and welcome to Slow English Stories, where we bring classic tales to life.
Today we have a strange and wonderful story for you. It's about a young man who is brave and strong, but lacks one very common human feeling.
He sets out on a journey not for riches or fame, but to learn a single simple thing: how to shudder. Let's begin.
In a small village nestled between dark forests and rolling hills, a father had two sons. The elder, Thomas, was clever. His hands knew how to fix a broken cartwheel, his mind knew how to count coins, and his tongue knew how to speak to the village elders. He was a son a father could understand.
The younger son was different. He was strong and his eyes were clear, but a strange quietness lived inside him. People in the village called him simple. They saw him watch the world with a look of constant, calm confusion, and they would whisper, "That one will be a burden to his father."
On cold winter nights, the villagers would gather around the great fireplace in the main hall. An old woman with a voice like rustling leaves would tell stories, tales of ghosts that walked in the churchyard, of dark creatures that lived in the deepest parts of the forest, of ancient curses that slept beneath the hills. As she spoke, the firelight would dance on the listeners' faces. They would pull their cloaks tighter, their eyes wide.
And sometimes, when the story reached its most terrifying part, a person would gasp and whisper, "Oh, that makes me shudder." A ripple of agreement would move through the room. A shared thrill, a delicious fear that made them feel alive and safe by the warm fire.
The younger son would sit in a dark corner, away from the main group, and he would listen. He heard the words of the story, but he felt nothing. He watched the faces of the others. He saw their bodies tense, their hands grip their knees. He heard them whisper that word, shudder.
It was a mystery to him. It was like a language everyone else could speak, a secret feeling they all shared, but he could not understand it. They are always saying, "It makes me shudder." He would think to himself, his brow furrowed in concentration. "But it does not make me shudder. What is it? It must be a skill, a trade like building a wall or making a shoe. And it is a skill I do not have."
One evening, his father found him staring into the fire long after the others had gone to bed. The father's face was tired. "Listen, you," he said, his voice heavy with disappointment. "You are a man now. You are big and strong. You must learn something to earn your bread. Look at your brother. He works hard. He will have a good life. But you learn nothing. You do nothing. What will become of you?"
The youth looked up from the flames. His expression was not sad or angry, but full of a strange, serious purpose. "Father," he said, his voice clear and steady, "I do want to learn something. More than anything, I want to learn how to shudder. I do not understand it at all, and I wish to learn."
His father stared at him, speechless. From the shadows, his brother Thomas laughed, a short, sharp sound of disbelief. "Learn to shudder?" Thomas said, stepping into the light. "You're a fool. A man learns a trade to fill his belly, not to fill his head with useless feelings."
But the youth's gaze did not waver. "It is the only thing I wish to learn," he repeated.
A few days later, the village sexton, the man who cared for the church and its graveyard, came to visit. The father, full of despair, told him about his strange younger son. The sexton, a man who lived his life surrounded by death and silence, stroked his chin thoughtfully. "If he wants to learn what it is to shudder," the sexton said with a slow smile, "I can teach him. Send him to me. The church tower at midnight, that will teach him."
And so the youth was sent to the sexton. For 2 days, the sexton taught him how to ring the great church bell. On the 3rd day, the sexton woke him just before midnight. "Go up to the tower and ring the bell," he commanded. "It is time for your first lesson."
The youth obeyed without question. He climbed the winding stone stairs of the dark tower. The air was cold and smelled of old stone and sleeping birds. As he reached the top, the moonlight shone through a high window, casting a pale, silver light across the platform. He reached for the thick bell rope, but then he stopped. Standing on the stairs opposite him, in the deepest shadow, was a figure dressed all in white. It was perfectly still.
"Who is there?" the youth called out. His voice echoed in the stone chamber. The figure did not answer. It did not move. "Answer me," the youth said, his voice a little louder now, not with fear, but with impatience. "You have no business here at this hour. Speak or leave."
The figure remained silent, a white statue in the darkness. The sexton, hidden beneath the sheet, smiled to himself. He thought, now he will feel it. Now he will learn to shudder. But the youth felt only annoyance. This was a place of work, and this silent person was in his way.
"This is the 3rd time I am asking," he shouted. "If you will not answer, and you will not leave, then I will make you leave." He walked purposefully across the platform, and with a powerful push, he shoved the white figure down the stone stairs. It tumbled down with a series of heavy thuds and a single sharp cry of pain, landing in a heap at the bottom.
The youth, his task now clear, rang the great bell. Its deep sound rolled out over the sleeping village. Then he went down the stairs, stepped over the groaning sexton, and went home to bed.
The next morning, the sexton's wife ran to the father's house, screaming that the boy was a monster, that he had tried to kill her husband. The father was horrified. He dragged his son from his bed. "What have you done?" he roared. "The devil is in you."
The youth looked at his father, his eyes clear and honest. "Father, listen. I am innocent." A figure was standing in the tower. It looked like a thief or a scoundrel. I warned him 3 times to speak. He would not. So I removed him.
The father's face was pale with anger and shame. "I have had enough of you," he said, his voice low and trembling. "You bring nothing but trouble. Get out of my sight. I never want to see you again." He pressed a small, heavy bag into the youth's hand. Here are 50 thalers. Go out into the wide world. And do not tell anyone who your father is, for I am ashamed of you.
The youth nodded. Yes, father. If that is what you wish. He felt no sadness, only a sense of purpose. Now his journey could truly begin. He put the 50 thalers in his pocket, and as the sun rose, he walked out onto the great highway, saying to himself, over and over like a prayer, "If only I could shudder. If only I could shudder."
He walked for many days, the road stretching before him under the vast, empty sky. One afternoon, he found himself walking beside another traveler, a thin man with clever eyes. The man heard the youth muttering to himself and asked what he was saying. "I wish to learn how to shudder," the youth explained simply. The man smiled a strange, knowing smile. "Is that all? Then your lesson is near."
He pointed to a small hill just off the road. On top of the hill stood a gallows tree, its dark shape stark against the afternoon sky. 7 bodies hung from its branches, turning slowly in the wind. There, the man said, 7 men who have married the ropemaker's daughter. Sit beneath them tonight. Wait until the darkness comes. You will learn to shudder soon enough.
"If it is that easy," the youth replied, "then it is a bargain. If I learn to shudder, these 50 thalers are yours. Come back for them in the morning."
The youth walked to the gallows and sat down. As evening fell, a cold wind began to blow across the hill. He built a small, bright fire to keep himself warm. The wind grew stronger, howling through the branches of the gallows tree. It pushed the 7 hanged men, making them swing and knock against each other. The ropes creaked with a sound like old doors groaning.
The youth pulled his cloak tighter and looked up at them. "You must be freezing up there," he thought, a wave of pity washing over him. "While I am warm by my fire." He felt this was not fair.
So, he found a ladder that lay nearby, leaned it against the tree, and climbed up. One by one, he carefully cut the ropes and brought all 7 bodies down. He arranged them in a circle around his fire, trying to warm their stiff, cold limbs.
But they just sat there, lifeless and still, and soon the sparks from the fire caught on their dry, ragged clothes. "Be careful," the youth said, annoyed. "Your clothes are burning." The dead men, of course, did not hear. They did not move.
The flames grew, consuming their rags. The youth became angry. "If you will not take care of yourselves, then I cannot help you," he declared, as if speaking to careless children. "I will not be burnt with you." And with great effort, he hung all 7 of them back up on the gallows, each in his turn. Then he sat back down by his fire and eventually fell asleep.
The next morning, the traveler returned and saw the youth sitting calmly by the ashes. "Well?" the man asked. "Did you learn to shudder?" The youth shook his head. "No, I learned nothing. You have not earned your 50 thalers." And he continued on his way, still muttering, If only I could shudder.
That evening, he came to a large inn. As he entered, he said aloud to the room, "If only I could shudder." The innkeeper, a large man with a booming laugh, heard him. "If that is what you desire," he said, "then you have come to the right place. Not far from here stands a haunted castle. The king has promised his own daughter in marriage and all the gold hidden within to any man who can stay there for 3 nights. Many have tried. None have ever come out again. If you survive, you will surely have learned how to shudder."
The innkeeper's wife rushed forward, her face full of worry. "Be quiet," she told her husband. Then she looked at the youth. It would be a pity for such beautiful eyes to never see the daylight again. But the youth's face was bright with excitement. "This is what I have been searching for," he said. "I will go."
The next day, he went to the king. The king looked at the simple, determined young man and agreed to the challenge. "You may take 3 things into the castle with you," the king said, "but nothing that is alive." "Then I ask for a fire, a turning lathe, and a cutting board with a knife," the youth replied.
As darkness fell, he was led to the castle. It was a great, dark ruin of stone that stood alone on a hill, its towers like broken teeth against the sky. He was taken to a large, cold room. The air was thick with the smell of dust and decay. He built a bright, crackling fire in the enormous fireplace, the flames pushing back the deep shadows. He set up his lathe and his cutting board and sat down, waiting. For a time, there was only silence.
Then, just as the clock in a distant village struck midnight, a soft cry came from a dark corner of the room. "Oh, meow, how cold we are." The youth looked into the darkness. 2 enormous black cats with eyes like burning coals leaped out and sat on either side of him. They stared at him, their fur as black as the shadows they came from.
"Well," said the youth calmly, "if you are cold, come and warm yourselves by the fire." The cats did so, and after a while, one of them said, "Friend, shall we have a game of cards?" "Why not?" said the youth. "But first, show me your paws."
The cats stretched out their paws, and from them came long, sharp claws. "Your nails are very long," said the youth. "I must cut them first." He grabbed them, placed their paws on his cutting board, and trapped them. "Now that I have seen your claws," he said, "I have lost my desire to play cards with you." He killed them and threw their bodies out into the castle moat.
But before he could sit down again, from every dark corner and every hole in the stone walls, black cats and black dogs began to pour into the room. They were dragging red-hot chains that clanked and scraped on the floor. There were more and more of them, a screaming, howling mob of dark shapes and fiery eyes. They swarmed over his fire, trying to put it out.
The youth took his knife and fought them, a whirlwind of action in the chaotic room, until every last one was gone. He was not tired. He was not afraid. He simply cleaned his knife, rebuilt his fire, and sat down again. He felt his eyes grow heavy. In a corner stood a large, 4-poster bed. "I think I will sleep," he said to himself.
He lay down, and the moment he closed his eyes, the bed began to move. It slid across the stone floor, carrying him with it. It went over thresholds and up and down stairs, moving through the dark castle like a wild horse. Then, with a great crash, it turned completely upside down, trapping him beneath it like a mountain of wood and cloth.
But the youth simply pushed the blankets and pillows away, crawled out, and said, "Anyone who wants to can have the next ride." He went back to his fire and slept on the floor until morning.
The second night, he sat by his fire again. At midnight, he heard a noise from the great chimney. It started as a low rumble, then grew into a roar. With a scream, half of a man fell down the chimney and landed on the hearth before him. The legs and torso lay twisted on the stones.
"Hello," said the youth. "That is not enough." Then, with another roar, the other half of the man, the chest, arms, and head, fell down and landed beside the first piece. The youth watched with practical interest as the two of us crawled together and formed one hideous man, who then sat down on the youth's bench by the fire.
"That is my seat," the youth said simply. The man tried to push him away, but the youth was stronger. He threw the man off the bench. A moment later, more men came into the room, silent and grim. They were carrying 9 human legs and 2 skulls. They set up the legs like bowling pins and began to roll the skulls at them.
"Can I play too?" the youth asked. He took one of the skulls and began to play with them. He played for hours, a strange and silent game with the dead in the heart of the haunted castle. When the clock struck 1, the figures vanished, leaving him alone once more.
On the third and final night, the youth sat by his fire, a deep silence filling the castle. This time, the door opened slowly, and 6 tall men entered, carrying a coffin. They set it down in the middle of the room and left.
The youth walked over and lifted the lid. Inside lay a man who looked pale and still. His face was as cold as ice. The youth felt a strange pang of something like recognition. "Perhaps he is my cousin," he thought, though he knew he had no cousin who had died. He felt pity for the cold body. "I will try to warm you," he said to the dead man.
He carried the body to the fire, but it did not get warm. So he took the body and laid it in the big bed with him, pulling the covers over them both. Slowly, he felt the body begin to grow warm. Then it began to move. The dead man sat up and reached for the youth's throat, intending to strangle him.
The youth leaped out of the bed, his pity replaced by a cold anger. "Is this how you thank me?" he shouted. He grabbed the man, put him back in the coffin, and closed the lid. Just then, a huge man appeared in the doorway. He was taller than any man the youth had ever seen, with a long white beard that reached his waist. He looked ancient and terrible.
"Come," the old man said, his voice like grinding stones. He led the youth through dark passages deep into the cellars of the castle, until they came to a blacksmith's forge. An anvil stood in the center of the room. The old man picked up a heavy axe and, with a single blow, he drove the anvil deep into the stone floor. "Now you do it," he challenged.
The youth took the axe. He swung it with all his might, and not only did he drive the anvil into the floor, but he split it in two. As the old man leaned over to look, the youth slammed the two halves of the anvil together, trapping the man's long white beard.
"Now I have you," said the youth. He picked up an iron rod and began to beat the old man, who begged for mercy and promised him great riches. The old man showed him 3 chests filled with gold in the cellar, and then he vanished.
The next morning, the king came. He found the youth alive and well. "You have freed the castle from its curse," the king said. "You shall marry my daughter." "That is all very well," said the youth, "but I still do not know what it is to shudder."
The gold was brought up from the cellar, and the wedding was celebrated with a great feast. The youth became a prince, and he loved his wife, the princess, very much. He was happy, but still, every day he would say with a sigh, "If only I could shudder. If only I could shudder."
At last, the princess could not stand it anymore. Her waiting maid gave her an idea. That night, the maid went down to the stream that flowed through the castle garden and returned with a large wooden bucket. The bucket was filled with icy cold stream water, and swimming in it were dozens of tiny silver fish.
Late that night, when the youth was fast asleep in his bed, the princess crept to his side. She quietly pulled back the heavy blankets. Then, she took the bucket and emptied all of it, the freezing water and the wriggling, flapping fish all over him.
He woke up with a violent jolt. A shock of absolute cold seized his body. He felt the slimy, writhing chaos of the little fish flopping against his skin. His whole body contracted in a powerful, uncontrollable spasm. He shook from head to toe. "Oh!" he cried out, sitting bolt upright in the dark, dripping bed. "What makes me shudder so? What is this feeling? Dear wife, now I know what it is to shudder."
And so, after facing ghosts, ghouls, and monsters without a hint of fear, our hero finally learns to shudder from a bucket of cold water and fish.
A funny and surprising end to his long journey. Thank you for listening to Slow English Stories. We hope you'll join us again for another tale.